What's up everybody? Welcome to the next chapter of my tutorial where we're going to discuss subdivision modeling in depth. Subdivision modeling is very commonly used technique. Well, it's actually the most commonly used technique by production, so you want to know this. Trust me, they wanted you to know this. So if you have any intentions of getting into this industry, and if you're serious about getting into this industry, then subdivision modeling is something that you would definitely need to master. So I'm continuing the house build here, just by looking at some of my references in my reference board and trying to figure out what can I utilize to make this look good. But in the same time, because as I mentioned, I didn't have a lot of time, I'm trying to think, okay, how can I make this? How can I make as little as possible and then duplicate it so I can save myself some time and and hopefully make it look good in the same time. So I decided to just make very detailed like a window type of like a window frame, with wood. And then when I duplicate it across, it will look good, because if you have one window which is one style, then you probably would want your other windows to be in the same style. So this was working in my favor. So I decided to put as many details as I can in this one, because when I duplicate, I would only change little things, but still preserve all the major shape from the original build, and that will speed up my stuff a lot. So as you can see, I'm abusing the the chamfer off feature in the bevel tool in my 2018. It just makes things so much faster, man. Like, imagine if you have to go manually, like we used to manually assign loops to every corner to make it sharp. It would take so much time. So this is like a big thing for me, where I just love that feature. And in some places, some complicated stuff, I still use it, but in 99% of the cases, I don't do support loops by hand anymore. It's thing of the past. Move on. So as I'm doing this, I'm trying to think, how would this be affected by time? Like if this was, if we had gravity pulling on this wood, how would they bend? And if they're hanging on a hinge, like will that break? If it's a very strong wood, if it wouldn't break, would it bend, because it's like water running down in summer, with like rain, winter is snow. So the snow, the snow is heavy. You think it's water, but it's heavy. So it applies pressure to the wood, so it would crack. It would bend. The hinges will bend and that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to think about all this stuff as I'm doing this. I'm just having a lot of fun, basically. Just playing God. It's so cool. To do this kind of stuff. As far as subdivision modeling goes, I'm just doing the basic primary shapes first, and then going into details and just breaking them up a little bit. And as I add more detail, I go and clean it up immediately. I used to do a lot of, like, when I used to was not sure what to do, I would just randomly cut some stuff, try to find the cool shapes, and then I would go and try to clean up. But because I didn't have a lot of time, I was like, okay, do your hard work right now, because then you will forget stuff, or it will be overwhelming to just go and clean up all of this stuff in the same time. So take that as canon, do that, please. It's much faster. So here I'm using the bridge tool with the curve option to make this the hinge. And again, I'm like, there's not a lot of tools or techniques that you haven't seen before or used before, that I'm using. It's more of what can I do, um, what is the least amount of work that I can do to make this looks like a hinge, because in the end, to be honest, like I spent a lot of time adding details that are barely visible in the render. Like you really have to look to see these details. But I mean, who cares, right? Like, I like doing it. I enjoy doing it. So if they contribute like 10% to make my render look better, it's worth it. If I have the time to do it, then they're worth it. So yeah, that's just my philosophy. Whatever I have the time, I will go the extra mile, because I feel like people notice this kind of stuff, especially clients, when you apply for work, and like random people on Artstation, seeing your stuff, they may or may not notice all these details. But if you then decide to put this in your demo reel, and if you apply for a job, your work will get decimated, like literally decimated. People will start diving in and looking at what you've done, like in great detail, and then they'll start to ask you questions to see if you know how to do this, like if you really did this, especially if it's like something really really good, and something that is not commonly done by people. People get impressed by a lot of stuff, and they oftentimes it's a blessing and a curse. Like this looks amazing, but did you really do this? Especially if you have, if you don't have a lot of other works to support that, you oftentimes get accused that you may not do this. You may not have done this. So you really need to know what you're doing, and be ready to answer those questions, because as people who hire, they need to be sure that you can do the job. So yeah. Okay, enough about HR and employing stuff. Let's go back to modeling. So I'm almost done with the window. I'm gonna freeze, group everything, name. Always name your stuff, people. I'm not the best example of that, to be honest. I oftentimes forget to do this, but for this project I decided I'm gonna go by the book, be clean, because yeah, it's a pain to try to figure out what poly surface 17 means after a week or a month, when you open your file and you have weird error happening. Yeah, so please name your files, be organized, because it will help you in the long run. Here's what I talked about, making one side looks good and then just modifying it. So I did basically, what I did is I duplicated and flipped it on the other side, and then I'm just adding random details to the wood, changing the silhouette and the shape just a little bit, just so I can, it will look in the same style, but it wouldn't be like a straight off duplicate, because you will notice that. And especially I'm planning to duplicate this window a lot of times, so this will definitely get visible if I don't do it properly. So in terms of subdivision modeling, as I said, I try to stay as low poly as possible, because the lower your poly count, the less points to move, the smoother the surface will look like, and much more, you will have much more control, and it's going to be much easier to edit and modify stuff later on. So yeah, here I'm changing a little bit the layout of the house, because when I saw it from the camera point of view, it looked a bit noisy around the the main entrance of the door, and I just wanted to lower that a little bit, because even at this stage I'm thinking of, okay, maybe I'm gonna have a lamp, like an orange type lamp that will be on the outside. So it would be cool if I can tuck the lamp a bit more up, so you don't really see it that much, but you see the light, coming in, illuminating the front part of the house. And at this point, it's a big debate for me if I'm gonna go like for a night shot or a sunset or like a day shot. So some of the stuff are not figured out yet, which is fine. And but I'm just keeping that in mind because that will influence a lot of the stuff that I'm going to do later. So I'm just constantly changing the shape of of the house, trying to make it look more appealing. In the main concept that I'm using for this, the main inspiration, the lower part of the house is very round, which it looks really nice, but it was a bit too stylized for my liking. So I tried to say it a little bit, and I tried to capture a little bit of that feel, but I didn't want it to go too extreme, because if I make the shapes very very stylized, then I would have to make the textures very very stylized. Everything has to work. So yeah, let me see. Okay, yeah, so here I'm starting on the door and the chimney and that kind of stuff. For the chimney, I decided to go with two smaller pipes instead of having one big hole, because it looked a bit more appealing from camera, and it would give me a better silhouette, and it would give me more opportunity to put like cool shapes of snow around it, when I'm to the stage of doing the snow. So a lot of this is just adding loops, making sure that everything is subdivision ready, because for the main house and for the wood and that kind of stuff, I do not plan to go in ZBrush and Sculpted, just because they would be in shadow, because there will be like snow on top of it, and unless I put the sun in front of the house illuminating them, you won't see a lot of the details. So I knew that I'm gonna have a backlit scene. I was just not sure if it's gonna be like day or night, but in any case, the wood would be in shadow, so there's no point in me going in ZBrush and making all these crazy sculpted details, because you would never see it in the final render. But because my blocking was very very rough, I had to do a lot of cleanup when the final subdivision modeling came. And as you can see, I'm starting to use a lot of booleans in the new Maya, in the newer versions of Maya, because they rewrote the algorithms, and they're much more predictable. And of course they do leave you with bad polygons that you need to fix, but I find that is much faster to do that, instead of splitting polygons, and then extruding it back, and all this kind of stuff. So, and also it helps me to be more loose and to not care about, not get attached too much to the work that I'm doing, because Boolean takes 5 seconds to do. Like, you make a cube, you bevel it, you Boolean it out, and you have a door. If you do that manually by hand, it would be at least 5 to 10 minutes, and you would rather delete 30 seconds of work than 5 to 10 minutes of work. So I'm just thinking about this kind of stuff, prioritizing what can I do, how can I save time, because the clock was ticking and I needed to be done in practically 4 or 5 days. Final render, comp, everything done. So yeah, I didn't have a lot of time to play around with this. So it forced me to be pragmatic. It forced me to think fast, so to speak. Um, and I think that I learned quite a bit from this one, uh, how to be fast and how to reuse stuff. For example, this door that I'm going to create is going to be the perfect example of that, because creating a cube on the grid, moving it in place, or even snapping it in place, and then shaping it to the face, to the shape of the door, adding all the boards inside, it just takes time. So instead of that, what I did is I selected the face that represents the frame of the door, extracted it, filled the hole, and then split, which means that instantly, like in like 5 seconds, I have like the base of a door. Same I did for the frame. Like at first I was thinking maybe I can make like a wooden frame, but then I started to picture how it would look like in my head with all the stones that I wanted to add later around it, and I realized, well, if you have a stone around it would be better to have like a stone arch frame for the door. So, but because I already like made a subdivision model out of it, I didn't want it to just go and make like stone by stone. So what I did is I basically split and just extruded them, and that was it. So here's what I was talking about, the door. I just extracted everything, filled the hole, split, extract the boards, and the door was basically done. And then the same thing that I did for the bridge, I would do for the door, where I would go and just move the boards a little bit to make them a bit more irregular, although keeping in mind that the door is something that is much more preserved than the bridge, because the door, first of all, there are not so many outside, weather conditions, acting on it, so it wouldn't be as broken unless it's like really, really, really old, which was not the case with this one. So basically, it was like really, really fast process. Um, and I think for some of the next parts I might do some time-lapse videos, because basically everything you just saw of me adding edge loops, just moving them around, making sure that they look great from camera, keeping in mind that I want to be quads, all this stuff, that I talked about already. I'm just gonna basically repeat until I'm done with the whole house, and that takes time. Trust me, it takes time. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna probably do a time-lapse video, maybe throw some music on it, and then if I'm doing something new, something that I haven't showed you guys yet, I will plug in and comment on that section. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it so far. I hope you're learning, and if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. I will try to answer as soon as possible. And with that being said, I think we're getting close to being done with this chapter. So in the next part is all about stones, adding details to the surface of the house and all that stuff. So I'll see you guys in the next one.